Happy new league year in the NFL. It is 4 p.m. March 12th, which means that it is official. Players can sign with other teams. It feels like there's been 1,000 moves since the negotiating window. Ethan Greenberg, Eric Allen, we're breaking it all down right here on NewYorkJets.com and YouTube.
A little bit of March Madness, NFL style. Of course, the Jets have been active like the rest of the 31 teams in the National Football League so far. That negotiation window opened up, noon Monday? It feels like we've been in free agency a couple weeks, but free agency just officially commenced a couple seconds ago.
Yeah, it's weird. I feel like this week, because it's been so long, these last 2 days, it feels like today's a Thursday. Like we've just gained an extra day during the week. It's Wednesday. It's 4 o'clock, which means players can now officially sign to other teams. Trades in years past have not officially gone through until this time in years prior. I don't think there's been really any huge trades of that nature that we're waiting on. Like I'm thinking of Russell Wilson a couple years ago. That was a big one that got agreed upon before this time and date, and now it's official. Everything is. We're waiting for the Jets to announce their first move, whatever that may be. And I think if you're a betting person, based on the chronology of what's been reported.
Well, we've been following the New York Jets tracker there.
And Jamie Sherwood's the first one.
Yeah.
Which is a huge move for Darren Muji, which what would be his first signing/re-signing as general manager.
Yeah, listen, this is a homegrown talent, and Muji said it in Indianapolis that you want to keep your young, good players here. You want to develop them, and then you want to keep them on the roster. He had an unbelievable fourth season taking over for C.J. Mosley in the middle of that defense and led the National Football League in solo tackles. And he's a guy who, what a story, right? Coming out of Auburn, a fifth-round pick, making that transition from safety to middle linebacker. And he is the guy, central command of that defense. And here, momentarily, I think the Jets will make it official that Sherwood is staying with the green and white. And give Muji a lot of props here because he never hit the open market. They got this deal done, agreeing to terms there early on Monday before this negotiating window opened.
And you know, Adam Schefter just tweeted, we were talking about Russell Wilson earlier. He must be watching the show, which I appreciate because he said Russell Wilson's scheduled to fly tonight to Cleveland to visit with the Browns on Thursday.
I was
before being scheduled to fly out to New York on Thursday night to visit Friday with the New York Giants.
Yeah, but the Jets got the quarterback that they targeted all along here.
Absolutely.
In the negotiating window, and we're going to get to that in a second. But getting back to Sherwood real quickly, 25 years old, and that's been the theme of these guys the Jets have agreed to terms with so far. They are all young players with, you're hoping, with a lot of upside. And Jamie Sherwood, he became one of the better linebackers in football, and I love that tandem the Jets have. Man, a physical, dynamic tandem of guys that can get sideline to sideline with him and Quincy Williams, of course.
You know, and Jamie Sherwood was a part of that 2021 draft class. Another guy in that 2021 draft class that just signed elsewhere in the NFL, according to Ian Rappaport, Brandon Echols going to Pittsburgh, signing with the Steelers. And so this really comes full circle here because this has been a guy for the Jets, much like Jamie Sherwood. Look, two totally separate situations. Jamie Sherwood
are expected to sign, yes.
Expected to sign, yeah. So Jamie Sherwood started out as a college safety, like you mentioned. Then he worked his way up to starter. Brandon Echols got drafted in the 6th round, immediately was a starter for the Jets, and then worked his way to being a core special teams player for the green and white. So kind of a reverse track there for those two guys. But Brandon Echols, the point being, is a very valuable player for the Jets the last 4 years.
Well, here's one of the early themes for the Jets in free agency. A lot of moves in that secondary. Not only are guys coming, but they're going. The Jets had close to 30 free agents in all, including Brandon Echols and Ashton Davis. And Ashton Davis, of course, the safety who played here, started his career, just recently agreed to terms with the Miami Dolphins. But the Jets, they brought in Brandon Stevens, who likely is going to line up across from Sauce Gardner, of course, and then Andre Cisco, that Syracuse alum that you and Caroline were waxing poetically about yesterday.
I had to. There's not a lot of Syracuse players that have, been in the league since I've been working for the Jets, let alone on the same team. And we talked about it earlier. Jamien Sherwood, he was the first agreed-upon deal. Well, it's official now.
Yeah.
He's the first official move of the Jets free agency in 2025. Would you call it or would you call it free agency? Like, I don't know. It's technically a re-signing, and he never hit the market, which we've talked about. But look.
But he was going to have multiple suitors. We were there on the ground in Indianapolis, and we talked to a number of people, and I said Sherwood's going to get a lot of people coming after him. And Muji moved quick and got this done. So that's a key piece. I mean, not only is he a talented football player in terms of what he brings to the game physically, but he is central command at that Mike linebacker position.
Yeah, and he's obviously, to your point, an ascending player. He's so young. A lot of these players, even Brandon Stephens, he's a young player as well with a lot of game experience. If you're watching this, by the way, please comment with what you're thinking, any questions you may have. Who should the Jets target in the rest of free agency? Maybe you just want to ask our thoughts on something. Fire away, and we'll pull up the best comments.
And subscribe to the Jets YouTube channel if you're watching on YouTube.
Yeah, make sure to do that as well. But with Brandon Stephens, you talked about it. I think when you factor in Stephens coming, Eccles leaving, Ashton Davis leaving, it feels like there's DJ Reed, another one. Yep. Can we pull up the list of guys on defense who have gone to other teams? Because the Jets were going into free agency with 23 unrestricted free agents. Then that became 22 with Sherwood. We're taking a look at other players who have signed or reportedly agreed to terms with a new team.
Yep.
Ashton Davis, you mentioned. Javon Kinlaw rejoined Adam Peters, who was in San Francisco when Javon Kinlaw was there. They rejoined in Washington. Hassan Reddick was like the first deal to be reported upon. He goes to Tampa Bay to join the Buccaneers. DJ Reed, like you mentioned, with the Lions. Solomon Thomas to Dallas. So a lot of players here, and Brandon Eccles is the latest one on this list. There are a lot of players on this graphic right now that played key roles for the Jets and weren't even starters.
Yeah, there's no doubt about that. Again, the movement in the secondary. So now Eccles goes. You got DJ Reed signing with the Detroit Lions. And Stephens, you're talking about a guy who started 37 of the past 39 games with the Baltimore Ravens. And I like his size. I like his speed. And again, when we're talking about age, he's 27 years old.
Yeah, and I don't think the Jets are done at either corner or safety.
No. Especially when you're looking at the safety position. But, you know, again, if Stephens takes over that CB2 role, you look at the safety position, Cisco, he is he's what you're looking for in a free safety. He's a guy who's rangy. And he can take the football away. That's the other thing that this Jets defense needs. Obviously, you're going to have a new coordinator here in Steve Wilks, but the Jets got to get better taking the football away. And this is a guy who's shown a knack to do that, not only collegiately at Syracuse, but early on in his career with Jacksonville.
You're talking about a loyal viewer. That's Boy Green, and he chimes in with a comment here. Jamien Sherwood is one of the best Jets draft success stories. Day 3 pick, changes position, develops, then becomes a starter, and now a key cog. So cool, staying home. I feel like we talked about, Caroline and I talked about this yesterday. He really is the epitome of what you want in a day 3 pick. Someone that earns a spot initially as a special teamer and then finds their way and develops into a full-time starter.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And I like what the Jets are doing from a coaching perspective. Aaron Glenn and then Wilks, because those guys are two dudes who see the game the same way. And Sherwood told me today when he was at the complex that he hit it off with them instantly. And you got
I'm not surprised by that.
Yeah, no. I said, what's the first thing you thought of when you talked to Aaron Glenn? He said, passion.
Well, you talk about passion. Jamien Sherwood is a guy who was practicing the Mike linebacker calls when he was not the Mike linebacker in his garage.
Well, and let's give a shout out to C.J. Mosley, because when Mosley went down, he fortunately has the toe injury week 2 during the Tennessee Titans game. Jets win. And then prior to week 7, I think, the Jets were lining up against the New England Patriots, and Mosley sustains the neck injury. But he was there for Sherwood throughout his maturation here as an NFL player. So you got to give him a lot of credit. And Sherwood has constantly talked about what C.J. Mosley has meant to him throughout his career.
And the latest news, officially, Cooper Kupp, now a free agent after being released by the Los Angeles Rams. We've been talking about a lot on defense here, and rightfully so. Most of the deals the Jets have agreed upon to this point have been on the defensive side of the ball. Well, let's switch it to the offense real quick. We mentioned Cooper Kupp. Let's just start with what the Jets did.
Yep.
Justin Fields becomes the latest agreed to terms on offense. That happened. That's like old news at this point. And when you look at who the Jets had on offense that were expiring contracts, Morgan Moses, to this point, is the only player that signed with a new team. He's in Foxborough, going to be protecting Drake May at the right tackle spot. And really, the biggest name outside of Morgan Moses that you would say on that list is a guy like Tyler Conklin,
That's right,
who is still available for what it's worth.
Yeah, and Yeboah is out there as well. He was a key special teams performer for the Jets, and he provided depth at the position. So Conklin is still out there, and it's going to be interesting to see what the Jets do at the tight end position, because not only are they going to address it in free agency, a lot of people think, and we've been talking about this for weeks, and I think that's going to continue as we get closer to Indianapolis here. A lot of people think that Tyler Warren would be a really nice fit for an offense that already has Garrett Wilson, Breece Hall, Braylon Allen, Isaiah Davis, okay, and Warren can help you in the run game if Fields is indeed your starter, or Tyrod Taylor.
Right.
Listen, those guys are going to compete. Tyrod is an ultimate professional, but both of those guys are dual threats on the ground, and they can get it done in the air as well. But, Warren, if he's there at 7, I don't know.
Well, so JC,
something to consider.
JC chimed in my opinion, tight end is a quarterback's best safety net. Are there any free agent tight ends you suggest the Jets should target? Also, is number 7 in the draft too high to take one? To EA's point, Tyler Warren, the Penn State tight end, does not seem that he would be too high to take at 7 overall, based on what NFL draft analysts are saying. Go look at Daniel Jeremiah's mock
He is
draft.
a different player than Bowers. Let's just throw that out there.
Right. And also anything compared to Brock Bowers, who just shattered every rookie tight end record, it's just not fair to the players who are currently going through the draft process. And it's not fair to Bowers.
No, I completely agree with that. But he's a guy who's going to help you or help a team next year in both facets. He's not just a guy who's going to line up wide as a glorified receiver. He's going to come in and maul people in the run game. And again, short area spaces, and he's going to free up guys down the field as well. The Jets do have some explosive players on the offensive side of the ball, one headlined by Garrett, Breece, and then at the quarterback position.
Yeah.
You're talking about Justin Fields just a couple years ago with the Chicago Bears, rushes for more than 1,000 yards, and he's averaged more than 50 yards per game on the ground throughout his career.
And look, I swear, everyone that's NFL insider and a big fish, they're watching this show, because Ian Rappaport goes out there after we're talking about tight ends. Our guy JC chimes in, and what does Rappaport say? Well, Evan Ingram's going to the Broncos reportedly.
How about that, huh?
So that, in terms of the free agent pool, that's another guy off the board. Juwan Johnson was a popular name. We talked about him on our show
Yeah, we did.
on CBS. Juwan Johnson back to New Orleans.
Yeah.
So, again, Tyler Conklin's still out there. And I think that, I'm curious your perspective on this. Let's say the Jets do, in fact, re-sign Tyler Conklin.
Ruckert's still here, too.
Yes, of course. And
let's
obviously
remind
the
folks.
familiarity
Yeah.
with Justin Fields and whatnot. What do you think then at maybe not necessarily at 7 overall, but how does that change the tight end landscape for the Jets in the draft? If Conklin re-signs with the Jets.
Oh, I still think everything's on the table.
Including 7 overall.
Yeah, here's the thing, and I know technical director back there, Chris Evans, is telling us that, there's Jets fans are a little bit nervous right now what's happening in free agency. My whole thing, when we look at free agency 2 days in, is that you kept Sherwood in-house, and you got the quarterback that you wanted. Those are super important moves here, and we're at the start of free agency, and I think Darren Muji is going to take a calculated approach, filling holes so he doesn't go into the draft and say, I need a starter here at the 7th overall spot.
Just for what it's worth, other tight ends that are available right now, we mentioned Ingram, who reportedly is going to the Broncos, Tyler Conklin, Gerald Everett, Mo Alley Cox, Harrison Bryant, Pharaoh Brown, Mercedes Lewis, Yeboah, former Jet CJ Uzama, Ian Thomas. Like Irv Smith, I think, is probably a recognizable name.
I don't care the positions as much, but when I'm looking at overall as far as who the Jets are going to bring in, I think they're going to bring in young guys.
Yeah,
and there is a theme here. So when you're talking about a 32, 33-year-old, most of the time, I don't know if that necessarily is going to fit what these guys are doing to start.
All right, let's fire up another question here on our live programming. And Boy Green again. Hey, Ethan/EA, which Jets player are you going to miss the most that is expected to leave? Morgan Moses seemed like a great interview for you guys on One Jets Drive Entertainment as an example.
Morgan's a great dude.
I love Morgan.
Yeah.
I feel bad because Morgan Moses told me that I needed to try a specific brand of diet root beer because he loves root beer, I love root beer, and I never got that chance to tell him that it was good.
Oh, yeah. So shout out to him, but it kind of hurts me a little bit that he's playing with New England. I don't want to say anything good about New England.
But at least you could see, at least like, it's a two-sided, double-edged sword here.
Yep.
Because on one hand, he goes to Foxborough, and you're like,
we'll
okay,
see him a
division
couple
rival.
times a year.
Yeah, exactly. You get to see the guy as a person a couple times a year before they lace up.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, he's a great interview, a good dude in the locker room. I would say the same thing about a guy like DJ Reed, who was up here in the studio a number of times, and he gave it all. I'll never forget that Week 18 game against the Miami Dolphins where he's battling a hammy, and this is a game where the Jets entered 4-12, and he's running down the Dolphins' back from behind. He's 10 yards behind them, dealing with the hamstring, and comes up with the tackle. So, there's a lot of good guys, and that's just the nature of the business is that you see movement, and these guys test free agency, and then the Jets are starting a new era here.
Look, it's been 17 minutes since we've been live. There's already so many things that have happened in the NFL.
Now what else you got?
Well,
we got some more quarterback dominoes?
I have nothing else in terms of what's happened. I just want to say for all your latest Jets news, be sure to go to the free agency tracker on NewYorkJets.com because no matter what you see on different social media platforms, that is the most official source that you can get from this building.
So let's talk quickly about the quarterback dominoes throughout the National Football League the last few days, starting with your level of surprise when you heard the Seattle Seahawks had traded Geno Smith, former Jets quarterback, to Las Vegas.
I guess I wasn't totally shocked.
And how will that impact the Jets? Because the Raiders are 6 overall in the draft.
Yeah,
I know we're talking about free agency here, but my mind goes to the draft as well.
Well, of course, it's like one hand washes the other. And was I surprised? Like, not really because of the Pete Carroll connection. I feel like that's obvious. But, my biggest question at the time was what's Seattle's future? They just let go of Tyler Lockett at the time.
Yep.
DK was reportedly going to be traded. Then he was traded. Oh, that's a trade that can become official at 4 p.m. DK to the Pittsburgh Steelers.
Okay.
And so then my initial reaction was, what's their move, their counter? And it ends up being another former Jets quarterback, and Sam Darnold.
Sam Darnold goes to Seattle.
This is like a really fun free agent in terms of the quarterbacks, like the dominoes, and they're starting to fall.
So Fields is going to eventually land here, okay?
After his trip to Dubai?
Yes. Now the question is, Pittsburgh, Giants, Aaron Rodgers, where is he going to play, and where does he end up playing? Minnesota, is it J.J. McCarthy? Obviously, Indianapolis got Richardson, but they had Daniel Jones to the equation as well.
And not only that, but if...
And you're talking about Russell Wilson. We started the show talking about
Russell Wilson. Yeah, that's what I was about to say.
Well.
Like, if Russell Wilson ends up with Cleveland, how does that impact, if at all, their plans at number 2 overall, where they'd be in play for a quarterback, whether it's the first or second quarterback taken off the board? We'll see. I do hear we have another question in the queue, though, which is the case. And Johnny Boy says, question for the panel, what group on the Jets will need the biggest boost and why? So, biggest boost that could be taken in a lot of different directions. I say after the initial moves, just from like a sheer bodies perspective, you turn to safety, even still with the addition of Andre Sisco, and you turn to a position that the Jets have lost a couple guys and have not added anybody reportedly yet in defensive tackle. And one guy that I think that we were talking about before this show, who has system familiarity with Aaron Glenn because he was with the Lions the past couple seasons, is Levi Onwuzurike.
Yeah, he's out there.
And he's 6'3", 290. I don't necessarily know if he's like a run-stopping defensive tackle, but the Jets need bodies, and he certainly fits the bill.
Okay, so there's a couple things. So system familiarity is going to be big, no doubt about that. And the Jets have a new defensive line coach, Eric Washington. But I will say this. You got to factor into the equation when you're speaking about defensive tackle that this is a historically loaded draft class at the position. So it has to factor into not saying, hey, we're going to draft a starter here. And they might. A lot of people have talked about Mason Graham. I don't know if he's getting beyond 5. Jacksonville Jaguars, I believe, have that slot. But there are a ton of very good defensive tackles in this draft. So you're going to address this position in free agency. You're going to continue. The secondary shuffle has definitely stood out to us. And then how about the wide receiver position? Because Davante Adams lands out west with the Rams, and he's going to be paired up with Puka Nacua.
Did you see the whole number shift there, by the way?
No, did it move?
No, I mean like in terms of
What's happening?
the jersey numbers.
Yeah, what's happening?
Okay. So
I know you love your jerseys.
I'm curious your perspective on this because this.
But my point on this with the Jets is you're going to have somebody else line up across from Garrett Wilson.
Absolutely. So here's what happened. Davante Adams obviously has worn 17 a long time. Puka Nacua wears 17. Puka Nacua, there was an interview that happened, I believe, live yesterday that he kind of said, "Nah, I don't think $2 million is enough for me to change my number." Later that day, the Rams tweeted this whole video how Puka was like, I wanted to change my number to 12. It's what I wore in high school. It's what I wore in college. All my family's worn the number. So now it's a big thing. Do you think
Carolina's just got some news for us?
Well, let me read off your screen here. Levi Onwuzurike, again, Rappaport is watching the show. I'm telling you, he's listening and he's tweeting at the same time on one of his multiple phones. Levi Onwuzurike will not be joining the New York Jets because he will be returning to the Detroit Lions.
Yes. Okay.
But anyway.
But the 17s, let's go.
So there's a look at Levi Onwuzurike, and if you could spell that, and that's how you guessed Onwuzurike was spelled, my friend, you are lying to yourself if you're watching this.
Onwuzurike. Start staying in Detroit.
And so, and also great name by the agent, C.J. LeBoy of Wasserman. Shout out to the agent. I mean, that's a great name, C.J. LeBoy.
So I'm going to get back to the receiver position. The Jets aren't done there either.
No.
Alan Lazard's still on the roster. You do have Xavier Gibson and then Malachi Corley as well.
What's our new question? We have another one. We didn't even get EA's reaction on the number changes. How do you feel about the Jets taking Armand Membu at pick number 7, the tackle out of Missouri?
I think that would make a lot of sense, and I do think that one thing that stood out to all of us about the build in Detroit was predicated. Their foundational start with the Lions was that offensive line. They had some pieces in place before Campbell, Glenn, Johnson, all those guys got there, but they continued to build to the offensive line. And when you look at the Jets, we're going to pencil them in. Right now, you got Joe Tippmann coming back in the center position. Aaron Glenn called him out in Indianapolis. You got AVT at the right guard position. We don't know what's going to happen at right tackle right now. As you just mentioned, when we look ahead to the draft, left guard, John Simpson did a lot of good things last year, and then you're really excited about the young left tackle, Olu Fashanu, out of Penn State.
And if you're watching this and you're like, who in the world is Armand Membu? And he is not worth the 7 overall pick. Take a deep breath. He's Dane Brugler's 8th overall prospect.
Oh, yeah, it would make sense.
He's Daniel Jeremiah's 11th overall prospect. And just a quick little snippet as to who Membu is as a player.
Here.
I'll read you what Dane Brugler said. As a pass blocker, he displays above average balance and quickness, plus a jolting punch in his set to mirror up and down the arc. He was equally effective in the run game as the Missouri offense ran behind him very often, and his drive power. Some teams like him best inside at guard, although there is nothing on his tape that says he cannot stay outside at tackle. He has played right tackle. I believe he's played left tackle.
Yeah, he could be a top 10 selection, and you like that versatility, no doubt about that. I don't think necessarily that would be a reach at all at number 7. We got a ways to go.
Absolutely. And the Jets could add a player there as well.
Yeah. So, I mean, for the Jets or another team, yeah, I think he's gonna come off the board within the first 12 picks.
Yeah, I think so as well. And obviously, I think Will Campbell is a popular name, but
Right.
he went to a bigger school.
Yes.
Obviously, both in the same conference.
Same conference.
Yeah, but LSU, I think, has a little more name recognition than Missouri at this point in the landscape of college football, I would say. But regardless,
Well, for a while they were DBU and wide receiver U.
yeah. Oh well,
Now tackle you.
the receipt. All this to say, I know we've been all over the place and we've kind of been at the mercy of what news has been coming down out of the insiders' phones of Adam Schefter, Ian Rappaport, Tom Pelissero, Garofalo, etc.
Yep.
The thing is, when you break down what the Jets have done so far, even though I think that free agency is a big hurry up and wait game, the Jets have made good moves across the board and they're not done.
You got both of your quarterbacks. You got your defensive quarterback who didn't go to the market. You kept him in-house. He wants to be here. He wants to be part of a flip. And then you got a guy in Justin Fields who went 4-2 as a starter last year, who protected the football. He had 5 touchdown passes, 1 interception. He also produced 5 touchdowns on the ground. He is a dynamic dual threat. You can do RPOs with him. You can do zone reads with him. He's going to put a lot of pressure on teams. And you have Tyrod Taylor here. So, I mean, we're not going to forget Tyrod at all. So you've improved your quarterback room. And then we'll have to see what happens in the draft. But that's the starting pieces here for you as an organization, is who's lining up for you at those positions. And by the way, defensively, you got Quinnen Williams, who's one of the better interior players in football. We're going to have to see what happens next to him. We got some time on that. Again, the defensive tackle class in this draft is historically great, but Jets are not going to be done at that position in free agency. And then at center, you like the young, talented Joe Tippmann. So you're starting to see an evolution or a build of the Jets, at least on the interior.
Absolutely. And in more defensive tackle or defensive line news, Taquan Graham expected to remain with the Falcons on a 1-year deal, according to Ian Rappaport. I think we have another tweet. I don't know if I heard that right.
Are we ever going to get to the AFC East here?
Well, we kind of talked about it a little bit, but Schefter says all 3 players the Bills have added so far played in Los Angeles last season. We don't see what he quote tweeted, but one of those players was Joey Bosa, who's the biggest fish of the 3 of them. You think about what the Bills did. They move on from Von Miller, but they bring in Joey Bosa. They're obviously looking for some more pass rush to go along with what their biggest moves, Buffalo's, has been the re-signing of guys like Josh Allen.
Well, they re-signed Allen, they re-signed Rousseau, they re-signed Khalil Shakir, and they re-signed Terrell Bernard. Now, the Bills have won the division, 5 consecutive years? What they've done with those signings is keep players in-house. That's what you want to do if you're a good team, and that's what the Jets did here with Sherwood. But they also freed up money immediately to go out there in free agency and get not only Bosa, but I also think they got Larry Ogunjobi,
yes,
who most recently played with the Steelers and the Cincinnati Bengals prior to that. So they're trying to fortify that defensive line, because we go back to the AFC Championship game. The Bills' offense wasn't a problem. It was their defense.
Yeah, I totally agree. And we only have 1 minute, less than a minute left, so let's fire up the comment of the show. We want Ethan Greenberg for GM. Great. I don't know who MM is, but that is way above my pay grade. But I'm happy to help out wherever needed.
The person commenting is way above your pay grade?
No, me being a GM. I mean, it's not really my background, but I do a great job in Madden.
You do love
I can also set the difficulty level myself.
You do love the draft. The Patriots quite active here in free agency. We mentioned Morgan Moses, Milton Williams, coveted defensive tackle.
Matt Collins stays within the AFC East.
Carlton Davis signs there, the former Detroit Lion, who played, of course, under Aaron Glenn. And then finally, the Miami Dolphins, been relatively quiet, but a pair of former Jets signing there in Ashton Davis and, of course, Zach Wilson.
So there's a lot of movement that's happened, not only within the AFC East, but within the first 30 minutes of what's the start of the new league year. Be sure to check out NewYorkJets.com for your latest free agency news. We'll be back here later in the week.
We didn't mention this.
Well, the music's on, and we're signing off.
Rashad Weaver.
Rashad Weaver's the latest New York Jet to reportedly agree to terms. Read all about it
27
later.
years old.
27 years old. Thanks for making me the GM, MM, whoever you are, and we'll see you later this week.